Hello, guys. May I take this moment to welcome you once again to our class? For today, we'll be looking at another important group of plants that is called the angiosperm. Don't forget that if you have been following our previous classes, you remember or recall that we have been talking about different groups of plants. We thought about schizophyta, telophyta, bryophyta, pteridophyta, then came into the spermatophyta, and then we have done the first aspect of spermatophyta, which are the gymnosperms. Now we are looking at the group of plants that occupy the highest position in the seat of evolution, or the highest seat of evolution when it comes to the plant groups. It occupies the highest position in the hierarchy of classification of plants or groupings of plants. And this group of organisms are known as the angiosperm. Don't forget we said that spermatophyta are the group of plants that produce seed. And this group of organisms called spermatophyta are now divided into two, the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. So these are the angiosperms. When we talk about the angiosperms, the word angio means vessel, then sperm means seed. So it means that angio, vessel, then sperm, seed. So it means that this group of plants have their seed hidden within a vessel, or their seeds are shrouded within a vessel. And this vessel, of course, we can call it the carpel. The carpel. We are still going to look at that when we talk about the characteristics of angiosperms. Remember, in the case of gymnosperm, we said something striking, and that was the fact that gymnosperms are naked seeded plants. And what does it mean to be naked seeded plants? Their seeds are exposed. Uh, they do not have the female part of the flower. So when the pollen grains come, they lodge directly on the ovule that is exposed on the two margins of the carpel. But in the case of angiosperms, the case is different because they have a functional female flower that has the stigma, the style, and the ovary. So when the pollen grains come, they land on the apex of the stigma, they pass through the style, then get into the female chamber where fertilization occurs. So we'll quickly look at a minute. We'll quickly look at the characteristics of this group of organisms known as the angiosperm. Please pay attention to everything we are going to point out here. So the first one I said, reproductive structures are flowers. Reproductive structures are flowers. So this is one characteristics of angiosperms. They have flowers. They have flowers. And possibly, maybe if we have time in another class, we look at flower and possibly describe the main parts of this flower. Of course, you know that the female part of the flower is called the carpel. The male part of the flower is called the stamen. So, this is what you see in angiosperms. They have flowers. Then we also have that their seeds are enclosed in carpels. I've explained this in my introductory class that the seed of angiosperms are enclosed in the carpel. The carpel is known as the female part of the flower. The collection of carpel is what they call the pistil. The collection of carpel is what they call the pistil. The pistil. The pistil. Okay. Then we also have that. Okay, seeds are enclosed in a carpel. I've explained this. They show double fertilization. This is another important characteristic of angiosperms. Please, it's important you know that other groups of plants that we have studied show single fertilization. It is only in the case of angiosperm, and of course, we're going to see that as we progress. It's only in the case of angiosperm that you're going to see double fertilization. And this double fertilization means that the pollen produces the pollen grain produces two male gametes. One of the male gametes fertilizes the egg cell, which is formed from the embryo sac, and then the other male gamete now fertilizes the two polar nuclei to form the endosperm nuclei and endosperm by extension. This is what we call double fertilization. I'm still going to explain this by the time I come to or we get to the life cycle of angiosperm. Then another one is that endosperm is triploid. Yes, endosperm is triploid. That double nuclei, that polar nuclei I mentioned have two n number of chromosomes. And these two n number of chromosomes, by the time it combines with the n number of chromosomes in sperm, it forms 3n. So this 3n is the number of chromosomes you see in the endosperm, and that is what we call the triploid. The endosperm is said to be triploid. That means that it has 3n number of chromosomes. Then another characteristic is that pollen grains do not reach the ovules directly. I think I've said this in my introductory class again, that in the case of angiosperms, when the pollen grains are carried by wind, they land on the apex of the stigma, they pass through the style before they get to the ovary. They don't uh, get to get through the ovule directly because there is stigma, there is style. So this is the female part of the parts of the female, the female reproductive structure. The parts of the female reproductive structure in a flowering plant, that is the stigma and the style and the ovary. So it looks like this. So you see the ovules around here, the ovules. This is the stigma, then this is the style. This is the ovary. So it is the style that connects the stigma with the ovary. So like I said, we may still find time to look at flower. Then another thing is that the xylem has vessels. If you can remember, we said that the xylem of Pteridophyta and that of gymnosperms are devoid of vessels. A xylem normally is supposed to have the trachea and the vessel, but these tracheas and vessel are only found in the xylem of angiosperm because angiosperm occupies the highest position in the hierarchy of grouping. So they have more sophisticated structures. They are more advanced. So in their xylem, you see uh, the tracheas, and you also see the vessels. A minute. The seventh characteristic, the cotyledons are either one or two. Mm. Unlike that of gymnosperms that are many, the cotyledons in the case of angiosperms are just one or two. Just a minute. So one or two. Then the agent of pollination are both biotic and abiotic. In the case of bryophyta, we did mention that the agent of fertilization is water. In pteridophyta is water. In gymnosperm is wind. I know we made a mistake and that mistake was corrected. Water was used for gymnosperm, but I later corrected it. It's not water, but wind for gymnosperm. Then when it comes to angiosperm, wind is part of one of the agents of fertilization. Water is still one of the agents of fertilization. Then animals or insects. And that is why we have biotic. So insects fall under biotic. Then wind and water will now fall under abiotic. And that is why in some textbook they will tell you that angiosperms have many agents of fertilization. Many agents of fertilization. So we have companion cells. In the case of gymnosperm, we said that they do not have companion cells in their sieve elements. What they have is albuminous cell. Albuminous cell. It is the albuminous cell that performs the function of the companion cell. Please note that the function of the companion cell is to help in loading and unloading of sugar once food is produced within the plant. So the companion cells are very active and they are found in the phloem of angiosperms. Of course, where you see the companion cells are in the phloem. Then presence of parents. I think also there's a little mistake that was made in this parent. Parent, initially, I think I wrote sepal and carpel. But what I had in mind to write was sepal plus petal, not sepal and carpel. There is presence of parent. The word parent means sepal and petal. Mm? You are going to find it in the angiosperms, or it's one of the characteristics of angiosperms. You don't see it in gymnosperm. That is because gymnosperms are flowerless plants. Mm? Or for some textbook, they will tell you that gymnosperms do not have a complete flower. But angiosperms have complete flower. Mm? And that is why you're going to see parent. So parent is a combination of sepal and petal. And of course, you know, the collection of sepal is called calyx. Collection of petal is called corolla. Corolla. A minute. So these are the characteristics of angiosperms. The characteristics of angiosperms. So we're going to go into the next subheading. Don't forget what I said about parent. Parent is a combination of sepal and petal, not sepal and carpel. It's sepal and petal. Just a minute. So coming to the origin of angiosperm, the origin of angiosperm, still uh, gives nothing problem to scientists. As a matter of fact, the man Charles Darwin, the man Charles Darwin, many centuries ago, uh, worked on the origin of angiosperm, and his conclusion was that the origin of angiosperm is an abominable mystery. Can you imagine the term he used for it? An abominable mystery. And the reason he used this term for angiosperm was because of the sudden appearance of angiosperms within the latter part of Mesozoic era prior to Cretaceous era. All of a sudden, based on his study, angiosperms appeared without a core origin or transitional forms of where they evolved from. And even till today, scientists still find it difficult to pinpoint that these are the transitional forms that led to the modern angiosperms that we have now. So, because of the sudden appearance of angiosperms within the Cretaceous era and their rapid diversification, Charles Darwin now said that the origin of angiosperm can best be described as an abominable mystery. Of course, we know that mystery is something that cannot be fully understood. And the genus that could be used to trace the origin of angiosperm is one they call the focula, the focula, the focula glorifera, the focula glorifera. This is one of the genera that provides a little insight as to the origin of angiosperm or the appearance of angiosperm within the Cretaceous era. Megafossil record also reveals other genera like the Sassafras, the Sacidiphyllum, and the one they call the Populus. But let's not go into that. So this is the little thing I want you to know with regards to the origin of angiosperm. So those genera I mentioned are, let me spell them: Sassafras, Sacidiphyllum, Populus. Populus. Okay, so we're now going to the next subheading. The next subheading, the next subheading. Remember, I said angiosperms appear in the latter part of Mesozoic. This is the spelling. Mesozoic era prior to Cretaceous. Cretaceous era. So this is how to spell it. So look at monophyletic. Look at monophyletic and polyphyletic theory of angiosperms. The word mono means one. So The monophyletic theory of angiosperm postulates that angiosperms originated from one single ancestor. As simple as that. Then the polyphyletic theory of angiosperms postulated or postulates that angiosperms originate from multiple ancestors or multiple line of descent and single line of descent for monophyletic. We have two schools of thought now. Why some scientists believe that the origin of angiosperm is monophyletic, that means that they originate from a single ancestor. Some other scientists are saying no, that angiosperms originated from multiple ancestors. However, the one that is widely accepted is the monophyletic theory of angiosperm, that even though angiosperms are so diversified, but they have areas of much similarity, showing that they all originated from one single ancestor, and that is a monophyletic theory of angiosperm. So, we'll go into classification of a system of classification in angiosperm. We're going to be taking this one after the other. System of classification in angiosperm. System of classification in angiosperm. Another system of classification of in angiosperm. This first one is this first system of classification. The artificial system of classification was pioneered by Carolus Linus many centuries ago, and according to him, in this system of classification, only one or few important characteristics of angiosperms are considered. That means that those angiosperms that do not have economic value are not considered at all. They are not put into consideration. And that makes this system of classification to be fragmentary and incomplete because it does not accommodate those plants that do not have economic values. In natural system of classification, just a minute. In natural system of classification, plants are all important characteristics of a plant are considered, and this system of classification was pioneered by Bentham and Hooker, two scientists called Bentham and Hooker. Bentham and Hooker. So based on what they said, all important characteristics of plants are considered in this system of classification. So all important characteristics are taken into consideration. Then the last one is the phylogenetic. In the case of phylogenetic, plants are classified based on their origin, yes, with respect to the concept of evolution, based on their origin and relationship with respect to the concept of evolution. So when we begin to talk about classification based on how this plant evolved, then what you're doing is a phylogenetic system of classification. The proponents of this system are Hutchinson, Engler, and tipo. And tipo. These are the three uh, proponents of this system of classification. Then furthermore, Hutchinson went further to say that angiosperms can be grouped into two. The one he called the lignocere, and the one he called the herbacea. The one he called the lignocere and the one he called the herbacea. The lignocere are the ones that are predominantly woody, and the herbacea are the ones that are predominantly herbaceous. Of course, you know that this is true. Is either a plant is a woody or that plant is herbaceous. So Hutchinson was the one who further classified angiosperms into these two groups. And like I said, we'll have angiosperms that fall into lignocere. I'll have those that fall into herbacea. A minute. Okay. So what we'll now do is to go into the generalized life cycle of angiosperm. Let's now look at the life cycle of angiosperms. Let me see if this is clear before I go on and explain. Okay, to a certain extent, it's clear. So this is how complex the life cycle of angiosperm can be. This is the plant. The plant, like we said, angiosperms are flowering plants. They produce flower, right? Just a minute. They produce flower, and of course, we have two parts of the flowers. The carpel. This carpel is also called megasporophyll. Whenever you hear mega, it is used to refer to female parts, whereas micro is used to refer to the males, especially when it comes to reproduction. We also use this in the case of the life cycle of plasmodium, the microgametocyte and the megagametocyte, if you can still remember. There's this the stamen. This is the main part of the flower, and micro is used for it. It is also called the microsporophyll. The carpel, of course, is made up of the ovary. It's made up of the ovule, and it also has a nucellus. This nucellus is also called the megasporangium. The megasporangium, and that is where the egg is housed. Then the pollen sac is also called the microsporangium. The pollen sac is also called the microsporangium. This microsporangium or the pollen sac will now bring about the microspore mother cell. The microspore mother cell. This microspore mother cell is also called the pollen spore mother cell because the pollen grain is the same thing as the microspore. Then the megasporangium, of course, produces the megaspore mother cell. These are the cells that help to produce the spores, either the microspore or the megaspore. While the microspore mother cell helps to produce the microspore, which is also called the pollen grain, the megaspore mother cell helps to produce the megaspore. This megaspore, of course, produces this megaspore produces the uh, the embryo sac, which specifically houses the egg cell, and the microspore on its own, produces pollen grains. Produces pollen grains. So here we wrote germinating pollen grain, but then something happens. This pollen grain will reproduce or will produce two different male gametes. And one of the male gametes will now fertilize the egg cell that is produced here. That is to form a zygote. You can see one male gamete going with the egg cell to form a zygote. And the second male gamete will now fertilize the two polar nuclei. The two polar nuclei will fertilize the two polar nuclei to form the definitive nucleus or nuclei. Then this will now result to the endosperm, formation of the endosperm, which I said in the introductory class that that it is also referred to as a triploid, endosperm, or that it is said to be triploid. Triploid means that it has 30 N number of chromosomes. These two polar nuclei has two N number of chromosomes. When you combine it with one N number of chromosomes from one male gamete to give you 3. That is how we got these three N and endosperm. So because there's fertilization here, there's also fertilization here. That is why it is said to have double fertilization. So this is the life cycle of angiosperm. Remember, if you have question in any of the teachings, all you need to do is to uh, put it up on the comment section, ask the question in the comment section, and within the space of minutes or hours, once I get the notification to the question, I will respond swiftly. So don't be shy. Of course, you're with your phone. Feel free, ask question, and I'll be glad to answer your question. I've made up my mind to do this to help students, and I will go to any length to do that. So just ask your question. In all the things I've taught so far, anyone you don't understand, just ask your question and I will answer you. Okay, the next thing I want to look at now. I want to look at the morphology of angiosperms. The morphology of angiosperms. Morphology of angiosperms. Just a minute. So in terms of the morphology of angiosperms, the whole angiosperm plant has three parts. It has a root, it has a stem, and it has the leaf. So I would like us to briefly look at these three different parts of an angiosperm. Let's look at it. We're going to start with the roots. The roots. Once we are done with the roots, we talk about the stem. And once we are done with the stem, we talk about the leaf. These are the three different parts of an angiosperm. They are called the vegetative parts of the plant. The vegetative parts of the plant. So I have the first one, which is the root. What is the root? The root is referred to as the descending part of the plant, part of the plant that is positively hydrotropic, positively geotropic, and negatively phototropic. Okay, let's explain this. When we talk about the root, as you already know, the root is that part of the plant that descends into the soil, not the one that ascends. And there are a few things I say there which I want to make emphasis to. I want to make emphasis on. The first one is the fact that roots are positively hydrotropic. What does it mean for a root to be positively hydrotropic? Of course, water is found within the soil. So the root is moving down uh, to the part, is moving down the soil, where there is water. So it's responding to uh, that part of the soil, or moving down to the part of the soil where there is water. The more you move down inside the soil, the more you see water. As you move down, you see water. So root is responding to that, is moving towards water. And because it's moving towards water, as it is descending, it is moving towards water. As it's descending, it's moving towards water. That is why it is said to be positively hydrotropic. Roots are also responding to gravity. And because they are responding to gravity, the force of gravity, they are also said to be positively geotropic. They are responding to the force of gravity because the force of gravity tends to move anything that goes up downwards. Hmm? Then it is said to be negative phototropic because root is now moving away from the source of light or where there is light. Hmm? They are moving away from light. This is opposite of stem that is now positively phototropic because stem is ascending or moving uh, towards light. We're still going to look at that when we get to stem. So this is a definition of a root. So we're going to look at the different characteristics of roots. Different characteristics of the root. They'll look at the root system, and that will be all about the roots. One is that buds are absent in the roots. Number two, root apex is protected by root cap. Roots have unicellular hair. Of course, if you have this as a root, hmm, or have tiny extensions, small tiny extensions from the roots. These are called the root hairs. And it's actually the root hairs that help the absorption of water and nutrients from the soil. Then nodes and internodes nodes and internodes are absent. So that's these are some of the characteristics of the roots. Buds are absent in the roots. Root apex, these are the root apex. The root apex, to avoid mechanical damage of the root apex, they are being covered by a composite structure that's called the root cap. The roots have unicellular hair. So these are some of the characteristics. So let's go to the root system. In terms of root system, we have number one, the normal root system. We have adventitious root system. So the normal root system is the one that develops from the radicle. Radicle. Any root developing from the radicle is said to be a normal root. And the typical example is the taproot. The taproot, as a seed is formed, it develops a radicle that penetrates right inside the soil. So roots that evolve from the radicle are said to be taproots. Taproots. These ones evolve from the radicle. Then when we come to adventitious root system, any root you see that evolves from or comes from any other part of the plant except the radicle is known as adventitious root. Like I said, taproot, which is found in dicot, are example of a normal root system. Then for adventitious roots, you see the fibrous roots, which is found in monocot. Then you also see the the foliar roots. The foliar roots, this one comes from the leaf. Sometimes you see roots coming out from the leaf of the plant, or roots that extend from the base of the plant. These ones are called the fibrous roots. They evolve from the base of the plant, and they are so numerous. They are so numerous. If you see where they cut palm tree, and you see the kind of root system there, it's fibrous root, because palm is also is a monocot. The foliar root, like I said, comes from the leaf. Sometimes, if wind blows, especially during rainy season, in such a way that the leaf makes contact with the soil, sometimes you see you see root coming out from that leaf. That is foliar root. So these are the two types of root system: the normal root system and the adventitious root system. What's the time? Okay. Then we also look at what's it called again? The types of modified roots. I'll just mention them. I'll just mention the types of modified roots that we have. So the first modified root is for storage of food. Roots are usually modified for storage of food. The first one is the falciform. The falciform. In this case, the hypocotyl is swollen. Is swollen in the middle. So in this case, when it comes to falciform, you see that the hypocotyl is usually swollen, usually swollen. Then, of course, it's non-tappers. It tappers at the base and the apex. So you can see the roots becoming narrow at the base and at the apex, but the hypocotyl is usually swollen. So this is an example of a falciform root. Then we also have the one they call the napiform. 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 So in this case, the root is swollen at the upper part. The root is swollen at the upper part and becomes spherical. Swollen at the upper part and becomes spherical. Sometimes you see roots that look like this. So something of this nature. So that's for napiform. You see this in turnip plants. Then this radish, you see it, this falciform, you can see it in radish. There's a plant they call the radish. Then conical. They have the conical roots. The conical roots. This one In conical roots, the root is broad at the base, conical roots. So the conical root is broad at the base and gradually tapers at the apex, just like a cone. The root is broad at the base, is broad at the base, is broad at the base, and broad. Can you see broad at the base? Tapering and gradually tapers at the apex like a cone. Yes. So you can see the root tapering at the apex, just like a cone. So the one that looks like a cone, you can see this in carrot, and carrots. So carrot is also a type of root. Then the fourth one is a tuberous. Tuberous roots is also called tubercular roots. This time the root do not have a definite shape. So this type does not have, you see this in the one they call the 4 o'clock plant. Let me just put a species, since we're having a species of it. Mirabilis sp, we're having a Mirabilis jalapa. So this one do not have a definite shape. They are said to be tuberous, or tubercular. 4 o'clock plant. 4 o'clock plant. That's where you see it. So let's now look at modified roots for respiration. Modified roots, a minute. Okay. So modified roots for respiration. So now this will have what they call the pneumatophores. So the pneumatophores are called the breathing roots. The pneumatophores are called the breathing roots. You see this kind of roots in brackish water, usually in brackish water. Like the mango swamp, in brackish water, like the mango swamps. If you go to this area, you're gonna see roots extended. So if this is the water, and this is the mangrove plant, very heavy. So as the roots, get into the water, they also extend to the external environment. And that is because they are looking for oxygen, which they will use to carry out their respiration. That's why they are said to be breathing root. Because of the kind of water where this fruit is found, of course, you know that the presence of oil. You see, You see this kind of roots mainly in Niger Delta, especially in brackish water, or water that is polluted with oil. You know, oil has a way of reducing the amount of dissolved oxygen. So the roots scampers for safety. When I say safety, I mean looking for air for survival. And that is why they also extend their roots beyond that water level in order to get oxygen. So this kind of roots are called the breathing roots, breathing on pneumatophore, breathing, breathing roots on pneumatophore. So we are done with roots. We'll now look at the stem. Now look at the stem. Of course, the stem is the ascending part of the plant that develops from the plumo. The plumo, the plumo. While the roots develops from the radicle, the stem develops from the plumo. So the ascending part of the plant that is positively phototropic, but negatively geotropic, geotropic, and negatively hydrotropic. Hydrotropic. So just like I explained in the case of roots, stem are positively phototropic. They're moving towards light. They're negatively geotropic, moving against gravity. Then negatively hydrotrophic, then moving away from water, which is the soil. So you can see this. So that's the definition of a stem. Then look at forms of stem. We have two major types of stem. The first one is the erect and the weak stem. Erect or strong stem, forms of stem. The first one is erect, forms of stem. We'll have erect, number one. Then we'll have weak stem. Weak stem. This erect stem are also called a strong stem. So those stems that can stand straight and vertically upwards, those ones are referred to the strong or erect stem. They'll have some weak stems. These stems are so weak that they cannot stand erect. So what they now do is that they begin to creep on the ground. So have the creepers, we have the trailers, they'll have the climbers. So these are the different categories of weak stem. The creepers, the trailers, and the climbers. So let's look at the nose and internose. The place on the stem or branch where one or more leaves develops is called the node. So if you have this as the stem, So the place on the stem where one or two leaves develop is known as the node. So this is a node, this is a node, this is a node of the stem. And the interval, the difference between one node and another node is called the internode. The difference between one node and the other node is called the internode. Internode. Now, of course, a bud is a young underdeveloped shoot. A young underdeveloped shoot consisting of a short stem with leaves arching over it is known as a bud. BUD is known as a bud. I don't want us to waste time on that. Let's quickly go into modification of stem. Modification of stem. How are stems modified? The first one is that stems will be modified to perform the following function. Stems are usually modified to perform the following function. The first one is perennation. Perennation, storage of food, then vegetative, perennation, storage of food, and vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation. So that's for uh, modification of stem. Then we'll look at the various types of modified underground stem, the various form of underground modified underground stem. Types of modified underground stem have the rhizome, have the tuber, have the bulb. I'll just mention them. Have the bulb, they have the comb. So these are the various types of underground modified stem. When we say underground modified stem, that means that this stem is found underground. We have underground modified stem, we have sub-area stem. And when we say sub-area, that means that part of the stem are submerged in the soil while some are exposed. And of course, when we talk about area stem, that means they are fully exposed in the air. They are fully exposed. So that's what we call area. So we're still going to look at this one after the other. We're still going to look at this one after the other. So for underground modified stem, that is where you see this the rhizome and the tuber. The rhizome, the tuber, and the comb. The rhizome, the tuber, the rhizome, tuber, comb. Then the bulb. Example of that bulb is onions. Example of that bulb is onions. That one is very, very popular. Onions or onion is very, very popular because of you can see the onion bulb. The way it looks like. It's conical in nature. It has a conical stem, a convex or slightly conical stem. So onion is an example of bulb. Please note that. Then sub-area modified stem, that's where you see runner. Offset, solon, and sucker. This one is for sub-area modified stem. Then lastly, let's look at area modified stem. Area modified stem. So just a minute. So the one I mentioned now are known as the one I mentioned now are known as the area modified stem. The area modified stem. Like I said, don't forget underground, sub-area, and area. So under area, you have the thorn, the phyllocle, the stem tendrils, and the cladode. So lastly, before we will say bye-bye to angiosperm, let's look at the leaf. The leaf. The flattened outgrowth of the stem so the leaf is known as what? The flattened outgrowth of the stem. So if we have this, we have a leaf to appear this way. Have a leaf to appear this way. So call this the leaf apex, lamina, then this is the midrib, then this is called the veinlet, this is called the petiole, they have the leaf base, So this is just a sketch, this is just a sketch of the leaf, the sketch of the leaf. The leaf base, of course, this leaf base helps to attach the leaf to the stem. Then the seat of food, the most important part of the leaf is the lamina, the leaf lamina. That is where the kitchen of the plant is located. And that is where food is made within the mesophyll of the leaf. Then the petiole is the stalk of the leaf. It pushes the lamina so that it will secure more sunlight for photosynthesis. That's the function of the lamina. So the petiole, it pushes the lamina or the main part of the leaf blade. Sorry, this lamina is also called the leaf blade. The leaf blade. So this petiole pushes the lamina or the leaf blade to secure more sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay, so lastly, we look at shapes, the different shapes of a leaf. Or before we look at that, let's look at venation. We'll talk about venation. We're talking about the arrangement of veins in the leaf. I'll have two types of venation. I have the reticulate venation and the parallel venation. So if you see in a leaf, you see this is the leaf. You see the veins arranged this way. So this parallel, but this type, as you can see here, is reticulate. When the veins form a network of other veins, that is called reticulate venation. And of course, without being told, you know that parallel venation is a characteristic of monocot, whereas reticulate venation is a characteristic of dicot. Okay, then in terms of leaf now, just the shape of the leaf. This is the last thing I want to do today. The shape of a leaf. When a leaf has a single blade like this, that leaf is said to be a simple leaf. You can see one single blade, one single leaf blade. This leaf now, either of the two, are said to be a single leaf. But let's look at a compound leaf, how it looks like. A compound leaf, how it looks like. If you see a leaf appearing this way, so this type of leaf now, because you have many leaves, attaching to the rachis. This middle leaf here is called the rachis. The rachis. We have many leaves here, arcing around a single rachis. This kind of leaf is said to be compound leaf, and it's pinnately compound. Pinnately compound. The reason is because the leaves are attached at opposite direction. But if you have this kind of arrangement, so you have this kind of arrangement where all the leaves are arranged at a particular central point, or arise from a particular central point. This type is said to be palmate. Palmate. So why this is a pinnate compound leaf, this one is palmate compound leaf. Then this pinnate can also be unipinnate, bipinnate, or tripinnate. So if you have something like this, or have something like this, so this one is bipinnate. You can see two leaves here, two leaves. But here you can see 1, 2, 3 leaves. This one is called tripinnate. So why you have why is this called pinnate? Because the entire leaves are arranged at opposite direction. I don't have time. I wanted to draw I wanted to draw the remaining parts. So I have leaf here. I have another one here. They are said to be pinnate just because the leaves are arranged at opposite direction. But if you have up to 3 leaflets in each of the sides, this is 1, 2, 3. Then this one is said to be tripinnate. Then because you have 2 here, this one is said to be bipinnate. All right. I think we have done justice to this angiosperm. We have done justice to angiosperm, and this is where we're going to stop. In our next class, we'll look at other aspects like the vertebrata. When we're done with vertebrata, we'll look at ecology and genetics, and that will be the all for biology. All right, I share this video and recommend it to as many that you know we did it. See you in my next class.